Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the Infatuasian podcast. This is a show where we aim to elevate and celebrate Asian culture and creators. Today we're going to be speaking with baker and author Helen Go. Helen has worked with Yotam Ottolenghi for over 2 decades. He and Helen have authored several books together, but this is Helen's first solo book, and it's called Baking and the Meaning of Life. It combines Helen's two big passions or two big parts of her life. She is a trained psychologist and has a practice in London. And while she was doing that during the day, she was also testing recipes at night for Ottolenghi. So this book discusses how baking is more than just subsistence or nutrition, but it touches so many different parts of our lives. And Helen digs into that and talks about how baking can be nurturing and teaching and remembering. And there's so many aspects to baking. And she describes it in these recipes and why they were developed and what these recipes mean to her and how they've affected those around her. And so it's a really fun look at how psychology and baking can go together. Helen herself was born in Malaysia and then moved to Australia when she was about 10. She started baking at her own little cafe for a decade and then ended up moving to London when she finished her PhD in psychology and also started baking with Ottolenghi. So this is going to be a really fun chat. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll get to our chat with Helen right after this.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And joining us from London, are we in London today?
We are, yes, absolutely.
All right, and joining us from London is Helen Go, the author of Baking and the Meaning of Life. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We were just talking about how it's 1 p.m. my time here in San Francisco and 9 p.m. for you. So I was worried that it'd be too late, but you said no problem.
No. 11 is my witching hour. It's when all my senses come alive and I do my best work around then, probably because the children are in bed as well. So.
Oh, that's true too. Is that left over from your days when you were a psychologist by day and baker by night, do you think? Or
Absolutely.
You've always been like that?
Yes. I mean, sort of we start to sort of get busy with service around, 10 o'clock. And, when the other sections are kind of cleaning down, we're firing up,
Yeah.
And sometimes, and you can't actually leave the restaurant until everyone's ordered, and you don't know that they might order. The latest I've ever waited was actually for Grace Jones, the singer.
Oh, that's a fun story.
Nobody knew what she was having. She was the only one left in the restaurant, and I think it was like 1:30 in the morning, and no one was going to kick her out, right? So just waiting. She didn't end up ordering anything, but I couldn't leave,
Yeah. My sister is in the food industry, and she's dated some chefs, and what do they call them? Chef's widows, or
Yes, exactly. Because once you finish, you've got that wind down beer time, and then you've got that late night Chinatown. You want some real tucker, real food.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So, anything good in London right now? How's the weather? You getting any snow?
Oh God, no snow, but lots and lots of rain. I mean, I've got my family are in Australia, so they're reporting 45 degrees Celsius days and like proper heat waves. So I can't complain. I mean, right now I've got lots of work due and recipe testing. So in a way, the rain is good because it just sort of makes me bunker down at home and get my work done. So
yeah. Okay. Actually, let's get into your roots a little bit. You have quite a story, I think, a little bit of a journey for you. Chinese Malaysian?
Yep, Chinese Malaysian.
Born in Malaysia.
My parents, actually both were born in Malaysia, but their parents were from China, southern China.
What did you speak at home?
I spoke a dialect of Hokkien. My parents both spoke Cantonese and Mandarin, and so when they wanted to, talk crap about us, talk shit about us, that's when you know the Mandarin and Cantonese comes out. But otherwise it was sort of Hokkien.
Hokkien and English.
Hokkien
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
English.
Malaysia's a cool place. I don't hear any of it in your accent anymore. Do you throw in a la once in a while if you go back
Oh,
home? Or
absolutely. It doesn't take much, I
yeah.
love, when I was young, I mean, we didn't go back to Malaysia very much at all. I think we were so focused on rebuilding a life in Australia.
Mhm.
So we didn't go back very much. In fact, I don't remember ever going back with my parents, ever.
Really?
Yeah. And I
Okay.
think it's only later on and even when I was, the kind of lure of Europe. And then now I feel like every year I just have this longing and yearning to go back, ostensibly for the food, but actually I've met some really cool people actually through Instagram,
Yeah. Yeah.
like-minded friends, like-minded people. And now I just feel a real pull, to go
Hmm.
back every year. And my family are all in Australia actually, but
Okay.
we, with such a long journey, we like to break it up, and usually I choose Kuala Lumpur and have a bit of a top up. But when my sisters and I get together, and my husband always laughs actually, and my brothers-in-law also laugh, because it doesn't take much for when me and my siblings get together that we start speaking like this accent. It's like my children look at me and like, who are you even?
Yeah.
It just comes out. It just sort of not even conscious.
Yeah.
It's just sort of innate when we get together. It's just like we just
Yeah.
flipped into this accent.
That's
And it's not like I'm pretending to be. It just sort of feels very, I guess, again, through years of trying to acclimatize, you just want to fit in,
Mhm.
When we moved to Australia, I was 10, just after 10 years old. And I think you're so self-conscious then, of not
Yeah.
wanting to stand out. And you just
Sure.
try so hard to be like everyone else, eat the sandwiches like
Yeah.
everyone else, and
Yeah.
speak like everyone else. And it's
Yeah.
become very sort of ingrained. And now, I mean, I've lived in London now for 20 years. So, yeah, it's quite fluid.
Yeah. No, I think I'm about the same age as you, and so we grew up in the 70s and 80s when, yeah, you didn't wanna stand out. You wanted to fit in with dominant culture.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Malaysianness really comes out when we eat, it's the food.
Yeah.
And that is still indelibly, I still cook the food that my mother used to
Yeah.
cook for me.
Yeah.
And then when we go to a restaurant, my children will order char kway teow and nasi lemak in the perfect accent. And for me, that's like success,
You may yeah. I agree, and I think that's probably the thing that, I'm a 5th generation Chinese American.
Uh-huh.
And I think I don't speak very well at all, but the
Mm-hmm.
food, I still have a love for Cantonese food. I love
Oh,
cooking it. My kids love eating it now. They're 6th generation. So I think if there's
wow.
anything that's going to carry on, it's going to be the food.
So where were your great great
Great.
grandparents
Yeah.
from?
It
Great
would
great.
be Southern China. So, the big
Mm-hmm.
diaspora came to America in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in my dialect, it would be Toisan, but in
Mm-hmm.
Mandarin, it'd be Taishan. So it's the southern part of Canton area. And so they were looking for gold or building the railroad, and they ended up actually, most of my family is probably in restaurants.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That's kind of what you had available to you back
Yes.
then.
It was what
So,
was valued, and it still is.
yeah,
It is still valued.
they say that
And
that's what kept us in America, right? If it wasn't for our food,
right.
or,
Yeah.
even if it was kind of a weird version of, chop suey and, you
Mm-hmm,
know,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
egg foo young, it was a weird version, but Americans liked it enough to not get rid of us all.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
no. It's a gift to America.
It
Come
really
on.
is. Yeah. It to the world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So speaking of the world, so you end up in Australia, Melbourne, Australia?
Yes, Melbourne. Yeah.
And so most of your teenage years were there. What was
Hmm.
the plan? You went to uni to study psychology, or what was the plan going into college and early career?
I mean, I was never cut out for like medicine or anything like that. And psychology was the sort of, pseudoscience for me at
Yeah.
that time. But I actually really loved it.
Hmm.
And when I graduated, I had this idea of, setting up my own practice and being a psychologist, but I was quite young, and the faculty sort of gave me some advice to just, go and get some life experience, have a gap year and see what you like and then come back. And I took that very literally, and I actually used my science degree at that time because that was my degree, and then my major was psychology. I used my science degree to land a job in the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, okay.
And part of my job was to kind of go around and talk to doctors about new drugs and new products. And what I found was that it was my job was a lot easier if I could kind of organize a lunch and get all the doctors to come, and then I could kind of sell en masse. I can kind of talk about the drug in en masse. And part of the deal was that I would provide lunch so that they would come. And then very quickly I thought, I'm much more interested in what's for lunch than what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I listened to that. Then I went to the catering company and said, "You have a job?" And I lasted a day. I wasn't very good. And then I had a partner at the time who was a journalist, and he was offered a kind of redundancy package with a small sum of money. And he said to me, "What would you do if you had some money?" I said, "I would open a cafe." I had no experience whatsoever. And he just said, let's do it. And we honestly had no idea what we were doing, but we just really cared. And we set up this little cafe. It was called Mortar and Pestle. And it was really cool. And people came and we got nice reviews. And then I just kind of totally burnt out. And that was when I tried to go back to training, actually. I decided I loved it enough, and I was tired of feeling insecure about not having trained. I loved it and we did well. So then I enrolled into a catering college, and part of that was that you needed to have a restaurant, to get some cooking experience. And I loved that so much. And then they offered me a job full time. And I thought, well, stuff the college, I'll just work full time. So I was kind of expedited into that. And so that lasted quite a long time until I decided actually, 10 years had passed by this point.
Oh.
And I decided actually that I did want to finish psychology, and I went back and did my postgraduate then.
Okay. So yeah, it's kind of funny when you're a little older, like us. 10 years is a long time, but for us, sometimes it feels like it goes pretty fast, right? Like it wasn't.
I mean, it felt like a long time, but on the other hand, I was kind of loving what I was doing.
Yeah.
So and in fact, I only bit the bullet then because you have to do your postgraduate within 10 years. Otherwise, otherwise you've got to start again.
Right.
And it felt right to me. It just sort of came very organically. I just started to feel very tired with cooking. And then so I went back to college and did the postgraduate, but I continued to cook because I obviously had to pay my fees.
Yeah.
So I kind of held the two, always with this mind that I would leave one or the other. And somehow I've just never left.
Either.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when at this time, I mean, besides this short stint in a little bit of culinary, were you mostly self-taught?
Yes.
Cooking and baking?
Yeah. Yes.
I think I read that you didn't even really grow up with an oven in Malaysia. Like people in Malaysia don't have ovens.
Yeah, but not just that. Even in Australia, even when we moved to Australia and we had an oven, we didn't really know what to do with it because my mum made pretty traditional, pretty trad Chinese food. She didn't bake anything. She used it to store, dried fish and mushrooms and funky smelling food. So it was, the oven was, wasn't really used.
So there'd be no hint. Like if I found a 13-year-old Helen, there'd be no hint that you'd be a professional baker writing cookbooks.
Well, except that as a family, we were pretty obsessed with food. So, every night we would eat. Every night my mother would we would talk about the food quite in depth, and she wasn't doing it to get praise or anything. She was genuinely like, "Oh, what do you think of this? Do you think the seasoning is right? Do you think it's on point?" Or, so we were just always discussing and talking about food. And in a way, my job at Ottolenghi later on was about, tasting food, developing recipes. Part of that, a very big part of that is tasting, being able to taste and critique and analyze and talk about, what would we do next? And so, no, there was no baking growing up, and there wasn't anything that would, it wasn't like I was in the kitchen watching my mother cook and desperate to learn. Not at all. It was more the critical faculty was sort of developed, I think.
And your palate and, just what you like, right? You learned what you like.
Actually appreciation of food. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So would it be safe to jump to London at this time in this journey? Or was there any other milestones along the way?
Yeah. That's pretty safe. Yeah.
Okay.
And so by this point, I had completed my postgrad in psychology, and that gave me the registration to practice as a psychologist. And then I met my husband, and we had this sort of long distance thing going on. And he's Australian, but he lived in London.
Okay.
And he said, well, let's try living in London. And I thought, okay, now it's the time. I'm fully registered. I'm going to go to London and set up a practice, and that would be it. So when I came to London, I enrolled for the British Psychological Society. I tried to get registration to practice. And there was just so much red tape to convert my Australian registration to British registration.
Sure, yeah.
And the alternative to that was to do a doctorate. And I thought, well, good, I'll do the doctorate, because I'm just not that kind of person who can sit down and tick boxes and answer this question like in 1994, what did you get? What was your grade in the? Like I just could not, for the hell of me, sort of, conjure that up.
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, what I really wanted to do was practice. And if doing a doctorate was what was going to get me there, I would do the doctorate.
Yeah.
But when I enrolled, there was kind of 4 months until the course started.
Okay.
And so my husband said, why don't you go and do some cooking stints while you're there? And we were living very close to the Ottolenghi in Notting Hill at that point.
Okay.
So I just kind of went in there, sent a letter and thought, oh yeah, I could do a few shifts here. I met Yotam when we just hit it off, and we've just never, we just literally have not gone a week or, without speaking since that point.
I have to admit, being over on this side of the world, I didn't know Yotam and his cooking, but I did a little deep dive on YouTube to see a little bit of the test kitchen and what he's about. And I love his style, and I'm obviously you do too, but what is it about his cooking that was so attractive to you?
I think it was this sort of unapologetic, bold flavorings. I've grown up with cooking where you use herbs as a garnish, like you put 2 tablespoons of herbs and you pick some herbs and then you pop it on top, And then, I go to Ottolenghi and it's like bunches of herbs, chop 2 bunches of herbs and throw it in, Yeah. So it's just this sort of very bold, unapologetic sort of approach to food, lemon and spices,
Yeah.
And it was that. And the deli itself was kind of quite pale and white and simple, but the food was just sort of like an Aladdin's cave, and that was really appealing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched one of his demos, and he's making an eggplant pasta, and the thing I noticed is the little extra step, like a little tahini cream on top, just a couple drops of it, a little drizzle.
Right. Yeah.
Or he's willing to go that extra step just to make it a little special, roasting.
Yeah, I think it was that. It was this, we were encouraged to take that extra step. And I think the thing that appealed to me most was his openness. He was very open to learning, even I remember very earlier on, I made some very simple Australian biscuits, cookies. And because I missed them, and he just, oh, what's that? He was just kind of very open to learning and open to new, to what people enjoyed. And in fact, a couple of the cookies I made then became part of the repertoire there.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel good. people felt like they could contribute in some way, and he
Sure.
listened to that contribution. And so it was a kind of real cross-pollination of, everybody being open to each other's ideas. And we were just kind of generally like-minded. We would finish work and then meet for dinner. And then, it was just a very permeable membrane between work and life. And
Yeah.
we were kind of new to London in that sense. And at that point we didn't have children, and then now we have children more or less the same age. So it just felt very easy.
Yeah. And were you, no, so he's from the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in London, so that's already a melting pot. Were you one of the few Southeast Asians or Asian cooks, bakers?
At Ottolenghi, you mean?
Yeah, at the time.
Yes, at that time, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although there was another man, Scully, who is Indian, Malaysian, German, Australian, so, and Scully helmed one of the restaurants too.
Yeah.
But at that point, 20 years ago, there were even less Asians, Southeast Asians here than
I could definitely see him, the gears in his brain turning, like, oh, we can do something with this,
Yeah, in fact, he was so into it that we ended up traveling to Malaysia together. Yeah, and we had a great trip, and he was kind of quite phobic about tofu, and I was like, so I kind of managed to convert him with a lot of things, but not durian, that was
that's a hard sell.
That was a hard sell. Yeah.
So this is a neat relationship that you guys have had for 20 years. And what was your early role? Was just a staff baker, and then you moved up to chief recipe developer?
Yeah. So when I started, I just wanted to learn. So I said I was happy to take a very junior role, really chopping vegetables, putting some things together. It was very temporary in my head because I was going to start this doctorate course. And then, after 3 months or 4 months were up, I said, well, I need to go now. I'm going to start this program. And Yotam said, well, you're not going to be studying all the time. So, why don't you just come and do this and come and do, so it was always very, the doors didn't close. It was just sort of, opening and closing of doors.
Yeah.
And at one point he said, well, you could test the recipes in Camden, which was sort of the early version of the test kitchen. And you could come on Saturdays and Sundays because you're not going to school then, not going to university. So come on the weekends and use that as your laboratory. And then I'll come around 4:00 and we can just test, what you've been making. And so that went on for quite a few years. And culminated in us writing the cookbook Sweet together.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've written 2 cookbooks with him.
Yes.
And primarily desserts. For your contribution was mostly dessert, but Comfort is mixed.
Comfort is not. In fact, I think I only contributed one dessert recipe.
Oh, okay.
But mainly it's actually from my life. So there's a lot in Comfort. There are a lot of Asian dishes actually. There's
I want to check that
mapo
out. Yeah.
tofu. It's a kind of mushroom version of mapo tofu. There's my mum's steamed eggs. There's always a little Ottolenghi twist, but there are a lot of my Asian. There's a nasi goreng in there.
Oh, okay.
There are curries. There are noodles, loads of noodles. It's quite a lot of what I brought from my heritage actually to Comfort, because the whole thing is what is comfort food, and for me as a main author for the book, I drew on that. What's comforting for me is my Asian food.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so I got to go check out Comfort. I haven't seen those 2 books. I'll go find some copies of them and take a look at them.
It's actually really special to me for that reason.
Okay.
I think that I've converted, and I mean that they've been sort of tweaked a little bit, but not that much. The essential flavors, the essential recipe is very much from my mother or what I grew up eating.
Yum. Yeah. Okay, but that leads us to 2025. When your first solo book came out.
Yes.
And it's called Baking and the Meaning of Life. I'm guessing that this is you in book form in a way, yeah?
I think it is, for a long time. And, I never succeeded in leaving psychology or baking. I've always
Yeah.
kept the both.
Yeah.
But I always felt a bit nervous about people knowing. Like, for example, my patients, I didn't want them to think that, that I wasn't serious about my work or care for them.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
wanted to be seen as a sort of, serious psychotherapist. I spend my spare time reading psych journals and, rather than actually cooking. So for a long time, I kept them both very seriously. I also in the kitchen wanted to be taken seriously as a chef. So I didn't, I didn't muddy the waters. And this book, I think, is a bit of a coming out for me. That it was it was sort of me acknowledging both things and owning them. So I think you're right. What you say that it is me in book form. And actually, people who know me when they look at the book, for Yotam was one of the first people to see the book, and his remark was, "Oh God, it's so you," So, and I think a number of people have said that. So I think you're probably right. Yeah.
And I'm guessing that you probably couldn't have written this book when you were 30 years old. Like it just.
Yeah, I think at 30, I was so concerned about being clever, learning and showing how clever I could be or what I could do to be a clever chef, especially with developing recipes for Ottolenghi. You have a sense of belonging at Ottolenghi and what makes it, special, and that you need to kind of deliver something unusual or deliver some excitement. And so coming to this book, I was less, I was more, Ottolenghi is sort of bold and outward looking. And I suddenly felt like actually I needed to kind of retreat a bit and something more tender and more inwardly looking.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I probably couldn't have written the book then because I was too invested in learning new things and creating new things rather than actually tried and true things that really deliver comfort or deliver joy or, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Yeah. Okay, let me read a little bit of your introduction, and it's a question, so you can answer this question.
Okay.
All right, so you say that's the central question that lies behind this book. Why is baking so important in the way we signify and strengthen the things that are meaningful in our lives? In fact, more than that, how is it that baking actually helps create meaning in our lives? Okay, so that's your thesis.
Yes.
What's a partial answer? You can't answer that in one sentence.
I think the partial answer for me is that baking, more than other forms of cooking, involved the personal, the relational, and the cultural. And what I mean by that is that when the personal aspect comes into it, when it's so sort of embodied and, baking takes focus. If you're stirring, you can stir onions and talk to your sister on the phone, when you're cooking. But with baking, in terms of weighing ingredients or cutting or slicing, it kind of, it's very embodied. And you need to kind of focus. And so it brings that moment of sort of calm and it brings that moment of concentration. So it's very personal in that sense. And then I think with cake, very, very rarely do we make or bake a cake just for ourselves.
Yeah.
There's usually a relationship involved. There's usually other people involved. So that, in that sense, baking is kind of more related or social. And then the cultural aspect for me is one of the most interesting for me. It's kind of this idea of rituals and traditions that we mark time like Easter or Chinese New Year with symbolic foods. And there is symbolic foods, but there's something about how baking is not necessary. There's something about how inessential a cookie or a cake is that makes it symbolic. Why do we eat that if it's not to satiate our hunger, if it's not because it's nutritious, because often it's not nutritious, then why do we eat it? And I think it's because it's symbolic. And these symbolic foods, whether it's a mamul biscuit for Eid or a pineapple cookie for Chinese New Year or, buns, hot cross buns for Easter.
Yeah.
I think that we mark time by these rituals.
I agree.
And that we locate ourselves in time and in community, because we are not the only ones making these hot cross buns. Thousands of people around the world at Easter time are making hot cross buns,
That's
thousands.
true. Yeah.
And in Asia, every household have their particular version of pineapple cookies or peanut cookies.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of both personal because you're making it yourself and you're marking time, you're locating yourself in that time, but also in community because there are other people. Everyone around Christmas time are talking about their Christmas cakes. Have you made your Christmas cakes or your cookie swap or, it's that sense.
Yeah.
So for me, there's meaning in that because it's not just eating of the food. So the very act of making it is itself meaningful because you are saying something. You're saying something about who you are. I'm Chinese, so I'm going to make these, pineapple means prosperity. So that's why I'm making this. You're claiming something about yourself.
Yeah. 100%.
And I think that in itself creates meaning.
There's a gift shop that I partner with on some different book talks. It's books and stickers and jewelry and stuff. And they have a saying that says, nothing you need, but everything you want.
Right.
That's kind of how I feel about baking a little bit.
Yes,
It's like you're not surviving off a cake, but
and it's a bit like, this sounds a bit highfalutin, but when you look at art, no one needs to create that. It's not essential. So we do it for some other reason. What does it evoke for us?
Yeah.
And there's stories all through my book because for me, it's what it meant to me to make something for a friend, what it meant to me to create something to take to a bake sale and, raising funds for, victims of an earthquake, thousands of miles away. It's that sense of solidarity. What brings us together as humans is this care for other humans. So for me, and especially now, it just feels, I don't know, important.
Yeah. More needed than you might think. For sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I loved it. At first I was like, what is this going to be about? Baking and the meaning of life. But as you laid it out in 7 chapters, and they're all important parts of our life, right? So chapter 1 is giving and receiving, then nurturing, celebrating, remembering, community, ritual and tradition, and then the last chapter is learning, growth, and achievement.
Yes, like that last chapter is a bit of an anomaly because what I realized was that although I was talking about, the social aspect of baking, I realized that there were people like me who get this sense of mastery with baking. And there are quite a number of people who bake not just to share with other people, but a sense of achievement for themselves, a sense of learning. And this sense of growth and achievement. And I thought, actually, that's meaningful too. The title, by the way, it sounds really grandiose, but it comes from when I was doing my training, there's a New York psychoanalyst called Irvin Yalom, and he had a novel actually, based on his therapy sessions called Mama and the Meaning of Life. And the premise, as I saw it, was this idea that all these ordinary little things that you share, all the ordinary things stitched together makes a meaningful life. And for me, it was all these tiny little bakes with their stories, whoever you bake for, whatever situation or context that you bake for, that all stitched together makes for a meaningful life. So it's a kind of, nod to that.
Yeah. Now I'm not being critical. I'm just being observant that some of these recipes are a little involved. There's quite a few steps and sometimes ingredients that may be a little harder you may not have laying around the house. But I think that's okay, right? Because
you know what? It's funny. I'm kind of surprised that you say that because for me, the book represents my life, and there are times where I really don't have the time to bake something wild or something, crazy.
Yeah.
So there's a recipe in there that literally is, in fact, I'm going to put it on my Instagram soon. It's really kind of tearing apart pita bread, grating some cheese and putting some za'atar. It's a 2-minute thing and it cooks in 7 minutes. And I cook that often. And then there are these Dutch baby pancakes, which are like
True. Yeah.
kind of popovers.
Yeah.
I mean, I can make that in
3
2
ingredients.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the oven does the work. In fact, I make that when my kids have sleepovers with their friends who come over. And I don't want to be flipping pancakes and watching them fight over pancakes. So I just make the batter the night before. In the morning, I pop it in the oven. And 20 minutes later, there's this huge, giant pancake that they're all at the table and they're all tearing and sharing. And it's great. So there are a couple, because I think there are people who enjoy a project baking. So there are, a champagne and blackcurrant cake, but there's
Yeah.
also a lot of very accessible recipes, like a vanilla, plain perfect vanilla cupcake is what I call it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my book here. There's a blueberry loaf, vanilla loaf, which is, lots of people have made. It's, I buy blueberries all the time because I think they're healthy, but I actually don't like them. So they stay in the fridge until they start to kind of go soft, and then I think, oh, I better make some cake, blueberry cake. So it's there actually, I would say that there's a real cross section, and
Yeah.
and there's also quite a lot of savory baking, because
I
I
saw
I
that,
think
yeah.
savory baking, I love the rusticity of savory bakes.
Mm.
It's cheesy, it's a kind of appetite whetter, and for me it's a nice introduction to
Yeah.
baking.
Now I heard your friend Yatam talking
Mhm.
about things that he always has in his freezer.
Mhm.
And one thing that he said he always has is a pack of puff pastry or some kind of a flaky dough in the freezer. That's okay, right? You could have that in the freezer and make a galette in 20 minutes if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. I would say bought puff pastry is immensely useful, but for me, not for galette.
Oh, okay, okay.
My galette recipe, I've got actually 2 galettes, and one is a puttanesca galette because my husband loves
Saw that.
puttanesca pasta, and I made that. And the other one is actually it's apricots, and I use chrysanthemum. You know chrysanthemum tea, the
Yeah.
Chinese chrysanthemum, which I love the flavor of. Every morning I start my day with chrysanthemum and goji berry tea.
Uh,
And I crush up the leaves, so it's a kind of powder, and I fold it into almond cream, and I line a galette with this almond cream with chrysanthemum. So those are the ways that but if you don't have an Asian pantry and you don't have that and you don't want to get it, well, you can put chamomile leaves, So I
uh-huh.
do give tips on, if you don't want to go out there for a special shopping trip, then there are alternatives.
Yeah.
But I also kind of want to encourage people to seek out pandan, because it's honestly wild. It's
One of
just
my favorites,
beautiful.
yeah. So
Yeah,
good.
it's so beautiful. And,
Yeah.
instead of vanilla, try this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, and you could see your whole not just culinary journey, but your life journey in these recipes, like there are definitely a handful of Asian recipes, but Middle Eastern and
Yeah,
European, and
yeah.
it- it's definitely who you are.
And now that I have kids as well, I need
Yeah.
to be sort of efficient, and I need to sort of think. I mean, they love the Dutch baby, and
Yeah.
they love, the pasties and a
Yeah.
and a blueberry loaf, and so it does kind of it encapsulates sort of the cross section of my life, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
And I see that you've been modifying things along the way too to be more inclusive. Like you have a chocolate cake for everyone, if you have nuts allergies or dairy allergies,
Oh
you have
yeah, that
lots of
one came
vegan
about.
things. Yeah.
Well, it came about because my older son is quite competitive, and he was at school, and there was a kind of class bake-off, and he
Uh-huh.
really wanted to win. And 3 of his friends had allergies.
Uh-huh.
Like one had a nut allergy, one had an egg allergy, and the other one was dairy. So he was like, "Could you, is there a cake?" And so we kind of sat down, and
Yeah.
that sort of came about like that. And actually, I'm glad he did that, because I'm not generally great with sort of vegan baking.
Mhm.
Because I mean, for me, there are people who specialize in that, and I
Sure,
just say,
yeah.
look, go to them. But this kind of, my son was really into it, and I was trying to encourage that. And so it came about through that. And I'm really glad, because I do make that quite often. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. Everyone out there, there's, as Helen says, the recipe for everyone out there, whether you have 20 minutes or 3 hours, you can find something to cook in this book. Well, how is the reception so far? Are people giving you good feedback on it?
I've been, I've been blown away really by the feedback. I would say particularly in Australia and in America. And I was trying to think why, perhaps it's less so in England. I don't know if that's true. It's quite early days yet. But I have a feeling that I think Australia, I mean, the book is quite, I wouldn't say it's emotional, but it's kind of tuned in. And I think maybe the British are more tuned into kind of deep dives and um, sort of irony and expertise. And even though, I bring my expertise to it, I'm not showing off the expertise. For me, what's important is the relational content. And I wonder if maybe Australians and Americans might be perhaps more tuned into that aspect of it. I'm not sure.
Maybe. Yeah, interesting. But everyone should definitely get a copy of it. You can get a copy of it wherever you get books. It's gorgeous. There's a picture for every recipe, yeah, pretty much?
Oh, yeah, because what I realized in Sweet, I mean, there are 100 recipes in Sweet, that first book with your tum. And I think there are 6 recipes without pictures. I don't know why, but actually, and in fact, one of them is both mine and your tum's favorites, and we hardly ever see people baking it. And I think, you do need that. You do need that photo, I think. You need that photo to kind of, it's a roadmap. You want to know what it's meant to look like, right?
Yeah, especially when you're just leafing through it, looking for something, you want to see it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it very expensive to produce
Sure.
a book like that, but I think, I really want people to bake from it. So I think the photo is, it tells you instantly whether that's going to appeal to you or not, so don't waste your time if that just looks, doesn't, if you don't want to put that on your table, then, don't waste your time with it.
No, I love it. I love it. It's great. And I think it's good enough, the pictures are big enough and gorgeous enough. It could be a coffee table book for sure, right? It's got stories and pictures.
Well, it's funny you say that because in America, I'm published by Abrams and they're kind of known for their big coffee table books.
Yeah,
but the book was put together by my a publisher in Australia. So, but Abrams picked it up, and I think probably and possibly for that reason that it appealed to them pictorially too. Yeah.
All right. Well, Helen, guess what? We're bumping up against the clock, but I wanted to do a quick lightning round with you.
Yeah.
Which is, I call it a YOW, which is called Your Asian Opinion. So they're not quick fire. You can take as long as you want to answer these.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. Question number 1. What's your favorite Asian ingredient or flavor?
Oh, I love tamarind. I think that the capacity for it to temper, either coconut milk in savory baking or sharpen a caramel. So I have a upside down pineapple cake, and that has a caramel on the base. And that Asian thing, not too sweet. How Asians. So to offset that sweetness, I've added a tiny bit of caramel tiny bit of tamarind to the caramel, and it just brings that complexity and that slight acidity, which I love.
Yeah. And it makes you think, what is that?
It does.
It's not lemon.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you did a challenge where someone says 3 things about themselves and you come up with a bake for them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, it started off on my book tour when at events, somebody's always asking, what shall I start with? Which recipe shall I start with? And I thought, well, how would I know? You tell me 3 things about you. And so on my book tour, this then became like everybody wanted to tell me 3 things about them.
Well, guess what?
You're going to tell me 3 things?
I can tell you 3.
Go ahead. I think I already know something about you. I think you're not so much into sweet baking.
Not personally. My wife is, but not me.
Right.
So the heat has been off at our school for 5 days. So it's a little chilly here. It's not snowing, but it's chilly.
Mm-hmm.
I like baking with yeast doughs, like pizza and sourdoughs.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have a podcast called the Infatuasian Podcast. All right. Those are my 3 things. What do you got for me?
Yeah. I'm going to suggest to you one thing that's going to dispel your idea that the book is very difficult and involved.
Perfect.
And that is, it's called Very Addictive Chewy Cheese Puffs. And it's actually Brazilian. It's kind of the pão de queijo. But, the cassava flour in there, I feel I kind of grew up with cassava as well.
Yeah.
And so it just gives that slight mochi quality it's like a French gougere married with a mochi. And it's made really, really simply. It's not traditional Brazilian, but I feel like it delivers all the umami, cheesy goodness, but then it's also got that sort of Asian bounciness, the QQ that we love.
Yeah.
And the other one is the garlic focaccia, which I think is a really nice thing to make, because largely, I mean, it feels like it takes a long time, but it's time. You just kind of set it aside once it's made. And let it bubble away.
No, I've already got that bookmarked.
So two things for you there. Yes.
So great. Yeah. All right. And then we end with our signature question, which is we ask our guests to name an infatuation. Infatuation is anyone Asian that you admire. Could be living or deceased. So Helen, go. Who is your infatuation?
Oh, gosh. So many.
Yeah.
How to narrow it down? Well, just by coincidence, this week I've been asked to make a cake for the opening of a film that Michelle Yeoh has starred in. And it's a collaboration between Michelle Yeoh and the fashion brand Self-Portrait. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I'm just like 2 degrees of separation now to Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
But there's a restaurateur and a friend here called Amy Poon. She's opened a restaurant called Poon's London. It's in Somerset House. I feel like she's sort of strong and warm and maternal and feisty and all of those things. I really admire that in her. And the other person is, I know I've sort of given you 2 there, but
that's
actually,
it's fair enough.
The one person, I know this sounds really romantic, but ever since I saw the biopic of Bruce Lee, I've been completely obsessed with Bruce Lee.
Yes.
Just that discipline, that mindset, that character, and also the kind of sadness in it, with his son. And I don't know, it just, that's really captured my imagination. His kind of groundbreaking presence and his groundbreaking sort of career and I didn't know that until I saw the film, that he had all that philosophy, but it makes sense. I mean, you can't just be this sort of champion without something in your mind being trained for that sort of discipline and philosophy. So I would say Bruce Lee, at the risk of sounding like a cliche.
There's never a wrong answer, though. That's perfect. Yeah. Well, good picks. And best of luck with everything. I saw a video of you in San Francisco in maybe 2017, a while ago. I think you and your Tom came to do a talk at the KQED, or the concert lecture series that they do at KQED. Do you ever get out to San Francisco?
I went with my parents when I was young, and unfortunately, when I traveled with your Tom there, we had such a it was just so quick. And I loved it. I felt very at home. I felt very comfortable in San Francisco. I think it reminded me something of Melbourne. And right? There's something very reminiscent, and
that's what I've heard.
And but I just wasn't there long enough to really get to the pockets of it and get to explore it. But I definitely would love to come back.
Yeah, bring the whole family. We'll show you around.
That would be amazing.
All right, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. We are so happy to have you listening with us. You can follow Helen on Instagram at HelenGoBakes. I'll type this out in the show notes so that you can follow along. And so, on behalf of Helen and myself, we hope that you're all happy, healthy, and
kind.
Yes, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Curtis.